Chick-fil-A, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so all
every single beat we do is named after food.
Yeah, it's the day trip recipes. When y'all release this video, just tag Seamless and take this little clip.
So from the Shecks and the Cordae, Nas, like pretty much when we worked with them, they were all brand new artists, so everything was just like new to everyone. So our thing has always been like just working with new artists, and it's just more fun for us because there's less defined rules of like what we're supposed to make.
We're coming in brand new, and they're also coming brand new in with us, which is, you know, it's really fun. Just trying to figure out that process together and land on something that we're both excited about.
Yeah, I think all of those records with those artists started out with us just like hanging out. I think pretty much every session we just got food before, like from Cordae to Nas and Sheck. Like I think Cordae and Sheck, we went to La Esquina, and then Nas we started with Chick-fil-A. So that's how like, pretty much all our sessions are like, no, let's just hang out, get food, just like get to know each other, and then like try to put something together after that.
Panini and Kung Fu were both beats that we had made before, but it was both conversations that we had with them of like what they're looking for, you know, what they're trying to do.
Rodeo was one that, it was just like in a collection of ideas that we had specifically for Nas that we ended up like building out with him, and we did kind of like Panini and Rodeo on the same day.
In that session, like we said, like it was the start of Rodeo and then pretty much the completion of Panini. You know, it was his first session ever since Old Town Road started to do what it did. So I think every producer probably approached it the same way, where they had at least a folder of like country sounding like ideas. So we had that folder, like the idea to Rodeo, the beginning idea without drums, like anything like that had been in there. Like months before we just started diving into like spaghetti Western music and just, you know, collecting different sounds, hoping that something like this would happen, you know?
Literally just the most random beats that we would do, like sounds like a complete spaghetti Western score, and then there's like random 808s on it. And we're just doing that for months for no reason. And then like, you know, 6 months later, Lil Nas becomes a thing, and then he's like kind of referencing those things too. So I was like, all right, well, I guess that wasn't a waste of time then.
So Rodeo.
We played this first, and Nas's A&R was like, oh, we should definitely put that aside and work on that. But Nas wanted to hear other things. So after we pretty much finished Panini in that session, I think we only had an hour left, and his A&R wanted to pull it back up. So we were kind of like racing against the clock to at least get the idea down and get, you know, the creative momentum and excitement put together in the session so that we could have enough for when we come back to it later. So it took us maybe like 10 minutes to get the whole thing together, because we already had like the loop, and we were like, all right, we gotta like get it down. So Nas is still excited about it. I think this was the next sound that we put in. This one, I think we just put out the Daytrip pack, and we didn't re-download every sound, but we had this one, which was supposed to be just a kick, but then we ended up like pitching it to the key and using it like a 808. Within rap, there's only so many 808s, and people always kind of reuse the same one, so it was kind of cool to have like an 808 that really worked, that had never been used before.
And some of the things that we did with him, like what you're focusing on right now, is like this little trumpet bit at the very end, which we just pulled all this stuff from Splice too.
Like Nas was just randomly like, oh, we need a trumpet in this one part of the song. We're like, well, none of us play trumpet, nor do we have a trumpet to figure this out. So went to Splice. This was the original sample. So then we just had to recreate that melody with like this trumpet sample. But like when you're working with the artist and you're like, well, we don't play trumpet and there's no trumpet in Splice that does that exact melody, it's like they don't care. It's like you just gotta figure out how to do it. So it was like, you know, a few minutes of like, all right, let's get it from Splice and chop it around and then layer the guitar on top of it just to keep that momentum going.
I mean, that's definitely something that's great about the Splice interface, because we literally just typed in Spanish trumpet and found that pretty close to the top, you know. But when we first played that loop, he thought it was cool, but he was like, I want to try something else. And I think what he said, he was like, I want to, like, what's like the most futuristic sounding thing that you have? For sure, the lead synth is definitely the standout sound.
So this is the lead synth. And it's just like the Prophet 8, which is like one of the first keyboards we got to really like dive in and learn. Something that we've like learned over the course of us producing is like the more space, the better. Like the artist has more space to do what they want, and it's easier for people to kind of chop down into memorable parts. So like this lead synth is something that you could say like, yo, what's the song that goes like da 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 da? And when you're able to like communicate like a part of the music vocally, then it's just easier for like the average person to remember.
One of the snares is from our pack, the Daytrip Lisbon snare, and then we also used one of the claps from the KBH Big Head pack.
So this is the clap. Very fire clap.
Yeah, so this is the Daytrip Lisbon snare from our pack.
You know, it was pretty similar to Nas, like where Nas had to write out for a minute of like what he wanted to say, and Cordae was the same. Like he just sat and wrote for, you know, a minute, and then kind of just had the whole song in his head.
So we played this beat for Cordae. So this was one that we had prepared beforehand, and it's the one that he gravitated towards. I think we made this song before we made our Splice kit.
Just timing-wise, it was weirdly in between when we were randomly getting into the spaghetti western soundtracks, and we were working on a bunch of stuff with like Latin artists. So this guitar, and you can see like the Latin and spaghetti influence, and then halftime.
I think everything, all the guitars are pretty much halftime on this. But there's a lot of KBH sounds in this one. I mean, I think that's for sure a pack that we've definitely dove into a lot, especially in the drum sounds. I mean, the clap sounds really good, the hi-hat sounds really good. We went through the trenches for a long time.
Right, and like on so many different genres and learning. So I think just the way that we approached making rap music when we started doing it was so different because our skill sets were from a lot of different other things. So that kind of like ended up helping like now we look back and all the hours and hours we spent like doing 30 versions of like pop songs that never came out is now like paying off because we put in so much groundwork on, you know, expanding the sound.
And we learned a lot from other producers that work in different genres as well. From those sessions, we learned so much that we're able to apply to the world of hip hop and, you know, venturing off into other spaces as well.
I think it's interesting that hip hop is so vast of a genre. Things are being weirdly categorized and it's hard to define like, you know, is Post Malone a pop artist or a hip hop artist? Is Nas X a pop artist or a hip hop artist? And they're kind of both. And there's so many artists that are like in between. But it's interesting to see the fact that the internet is the way that music moves now, the underground of music that used to be like, oh, you have to like know this one record store that has this one thing, or you know this one person, like, and something could stay underground for so long. Now it's like someone does something, boom, now it's like mainstream, and then everyone is like trading these ideas around, and they mutate, and then like it becomes a little bit more pop, someone does it a little bit more street. So there's the same sounds between, I'm sure like all these sounds are on Splice, but you could hear the same hi-hat on Ariana Grande, on Post, on Nas X, on like Taylor Swift probably has like the same hi-hat sample that like everyone else has. But it's just interesting to see that like everything is kind of, you know, converging in different ways now that they never had before.
I think what's cool with the Grammys this year too, you know, you have 3 artists nominated for Best New Artist that all had #1s this year. Billie Eilish, Lil Nas X, and Lizzo. And, you know, that category in general is full of people that already feel like veterans in the music industry, but, you know, haven't been around for that long. So it's cool to see what you were saying earlier, like how fast music is starting to, you know, reach people. Another thing that we've been noticing as well is like really how small the world is starting to become through, you know, different sounds really starting to actually cross borders. I mean, I think the first really big one that, you know, people all over the world really saw was Despacito with Justin Bieber and, you know, Luis Fonsi. Something that we've always focused on too when you look at the genres of Afro beats, a lot of Latin music, and just, you know, a lot of popular music in general is falling within the same tempo range. And we're starting to see these little overlaps, you know, like J Balvin and Bad Bunny just did a song with Mr. Easy that is a take on like Afro beats and reggaeton like all in one. But it's really interesting, you know, seeing these overlaps in tempos and just seeing where the drums, you know, fall on individual grids for each song, but still seeing the similarities and just sometimes it's just taking a sound from one genre and putting it on another and then experimenting by throwing these different artists on, you know, different kind of records. You know, another thing with Afro beats too, you know, it's something that the United States has been open to, especially with like Drake and like One Dance and Controlla and those records that, you know, came out not like a couple years ago. My biggest, or our biggest hope is starting to actually see, you know, obviously WizKid was on One Dance, but really starting to see artists from those places of the world really start to cross over into the United States. You know, people like Burna Boy and like Rema and like, you know, Kwesi Arthur and these people that were really excited about starting to cross over in the United States on their own. The drill stuff is interesting to us because a lot of it falls within like a 140 BPM template, which is also similar to, you know, a trap hip hop template. And I think New York has been a perfect place to pick up from, you know, the type of drill music that the UK was making for it to then reach New York the way that it's reached. Like Axel Beats and 808 Mellow, the sound that they've created over there and how it's starting to come over here with Pop Smoke and like 504 and I mean, that's exciting. Like, right. It's really exciting to us to see, especially being here for so long and seeing when New York gets behind a record, how far they can push it from like Mo Bamba to Panda to like Hot Nigga, you know, just what New York has been able to get behind and like push to, you know, this high mainstream level, you know, Bodak Yellow being another one. And I guess the last one being the Food Salt Shuffle kind of vibe. The cool thing to me for that one, obviously Uzi put it out the way that he put it out, but I feel like it could be a sound that can be created in any genre, but still holds that feeling. And it's just like fun the whole way around. But you know, something that we've talked about, like experimenting with those kind of sounds and bringing it into like Afrobeat space or like a reggaeton space or like even an R&B space, like there's just so many different places that you can go with it. And I think now that people are starting to become familiar to it, it's just about, you know, taking people on an adventure like with these different sounds. Yeah.
'Cause I feel like when a specific type of music or a specific world or subgenre of like hip hop can make people dance in a specific way, then it has the potential to like grow to be, you know, something that's huge. Like I watched the interview with Teddy Riley and Michael Jackson when they were working on music together. Michael Jackson would say like, oh, how would I dance to this?
Yeah, I mean, all three of those genres that we just talked about have, yeah, and it's all different kinds of dances and different types of ways to just have fun. And there's always something to learn, you know, besides just learning how to dance a specific way to a certain record. Like, there's a whole background and a whole story like behind Afro beats, behind reggaeton, behind drill music, you know, that goes back further than, you know, the UK and New York, you know, how we were saying back to Chicago. There's a sense of discovery in every single thing, and even just as kids when we were growing up, you know, how much we dove into music, that when you start to become obsessed with a certain type of genre, a certain type of artist, it becomes more than just, you know, the dance behind like Crank That Soulja Boy or like this or that. It becomes the whole overall thing that's happening within the genre or within the space. And there's so much happening within these genres, within these spaces that excite us, that we could really see, you know, continuing to do what it's doing right now.
That there was like a festival like last month that 800,000 Americans went to Ghana, but that would have never happened if it wasn't for the music becoming popular here. But then the fact that all those people are over there and like learning about new cultures and people mixing and learning new things and trading ideas, like that is like potentially like world changing, you know, like changing everything.
Yeah.
The information transferring between people.
Music's a beautiful thing because it really can make the world feel smaller, and like any, you know, anything that we may have heard, you know, growing up in places like this, it eliminates any risk or any, you know, bad feelings we might have had about places before, and really understand that, you know, people around the world are beautiful and the music that we make is beautiful and we can all be a part of it. You know, and then we'll see what the Grammys look like the next year and the year after that and everything, you know.